Stop scrolling. If you've been feeling like people are suddenly watching you differently, there may be a reason. Someone has been looking deeper into your past, not because you're weak, but because they're trying to understand what makes you different. And now, something about the person above you is beginning to come to light. Your boss, your authority figure, or the person who thought they had control may have underestimated you completely. But here's the real question. What happens when the person they were investigating turns out to be the person they should have respected? There is a reason people sometimes become curious about your past when they can no longer explain your present. They look at you today and see something they cannot easily categorize. They see the calmness, the discipline, the confidence, the way you carry yourself under pressure, and they wonder, where did this person come from? They may not understand that what they are seeing was built through years of experiences that nobody else witnessed. Your present may look unusual to them because they never saw the battles that created it. When someone cannot understand your strength, they often search for an explanation. They look backward. They examine your history, your choices, your failures, your relationships, your previous struggles, and the moments when you were not yet the person you are today. They expect to find something that explains your confidence. They expect to find a weakness they can label. But what they may discover is something completely different, evidence that you have already survived things that were supposed to destroy your confidence. Your past contains chapters that you may not even like remembering. There were moments when you questioned yourself. There were times when you felt overlooked, underestimated, rejected, or completely alone. You made mistakes. You trusted people who did not deserve your trust. You gave opportunities to people who eventually showed you their true intentions. You experienced disappointment that forced you to grow up emotionally. But those moments did not disappear without leaving something behind. They left lessons. Every difficult season taught you something. Every betrayal taught you to recognize patterns. Every rejection taught you that one closed door does not determine your worth. Every failure taught you that falling does not mean staying down. Every period of uncertainty taught you how to continue moving without having every answer. And now, those lessons are visible in the way you respond to life. That is why your present can confuse people. They may see someone who doesn't react the way they expected. They may push your buttons and discover that you don't explode anymore. They may criticize you and discover that you don't collapse. They may try to make you doubt yourself and discover that you have already spent years fighting that battle internally, and you won. Your silence may be mistaken for weakness because people don't understand what it means when someone has learned emotional control. Your patience may be mistaken for passivity. Your distance may be mistaken for arrogance. Your confidence may be mistaken for something mysterious. But sometimes, the simplest explanation is the strongest one. You grew. You became more aware of yourself. You stopped needing everyone to understand you. You stopped explaining every decision. You stopped begging people to recognize your value. And that transformation can make people curious. But remember this, you do not owe anyone a perfectly polished history. You do not have to erase your mistakes to deserve respect. You do not have to pretend you have never struggled. Your scars are not evidence that you are broken. They are evidence that you continued. So if people are looking into your past, let them look. Let them discover the lessons. Let them see the chapters you survived. Because when they compare your past with who you are today, they may finally understand what you already know. You are not the person your hardest moment created. You are the person who chose to rise after it. And that is exactly why your present is so difficult for them to explain. Your past is not the evidence that you should be ashamed of yourself. It is evidence that you survived, adapted, learned, and continued. There is a difference between having a complicated history and being defined by it. Too many people allow old mistakes to become permanent labels. They look at something they did years ago and decide that it must determine who they are forever. But growth means understanding that yesterday can explain you without controlling you. Think about everything you have already overcome. There were moments when you didn't know how things would work out, yet somehow you kept moving. There were seasons when your confidence was almost gone, yet you still showed up. There were people who underestimated you, situations that embarrassed you, opportunities you lost, and decisions you wish you could make differently. But every one of those experiences gave you information. Pain became instruction. Failure became feedback. Rejection became redirection. That is what makes your past powerful. Someone looking at your history may focus on the wrong things. They may notice the mistakes before they notice the transformation. They may remember who you were before you developed discipline. They may judge the version of you that existed before you understood yourself. But you know something they don't. You are not obligated to remain the person you were 5 years ago, 5 months ago, or even 5 minutes ago. Growth can happen in an instant when you finally understand what a painful experience was trying to teach you. Maybe you once trusted too easily. Now you recognize patterns. Maybe you once needed everyone's approval. Now you can stand alone. Maybe you used to react immediately when someone provoked you. Now you pause and think. Maybe you used to chase people who didn't value you. Now you understand that your energy is valuable. That isn't weakness. That's development. Your past becomes proof when you stop hiding from it and start learning from it. You don't have to glorify everything that happened to you. Some experiences were genuinely painful. Some people genuinely treated you unfairly. Some mistakes genuinely cost you opportunities. But you can still refuse to let those experiences become the final definition of your life. Imagine someone opening an old chapter of your story expecting to find a reason to discredit you. Instead, they find evidence of resilience. They discover that you didn't have an easy path. They discover that you kept rebuilding yourself. They discover that you learned from your failures rather than surrendering to them. Suddenly, the same history they thought would weaken you becomes the reason they respect you. This is why you should never be embarrassed by the road that made you stronger. You don't need to pretend your journey was perfect. You don't need to hide every scar. You don't need to rewrite your history to make other people comfortable. Own it, learn from it, then move beyond it. Your past should become a classroom, not a prison. Let it teach you, but don't let it command you. Let it remind you of how far you've come, but don't let it convince you that you've reached your limit. Because the most powerful thing about your history isn't what happened to you. It's what you decided to become afterward. You survived the version of yourself that didn't know what you know now. You endured situations that once seemed impossible. You learned lessons that cannot be purchased with money or taught by theory. So when someone looks backwards searching for a weakness, remember what they may actually find. Proof that you are stronger than the circumstances that once tried to define you. Your history is not your sentence. It is your evidence. Evidence that you can fall and rise. Evidence that you can lose and rebuild. Evidence that you can be rejected and still move forward. And most importantly, evidence that the person you are becoming is far more powerful than the person you used to be. Sometimes people in positions of authority become so comfortable with their titles that they forget something important. A position gives you responsibility, but it does not automatically give you control over another person's mind, character, or future. A boss may have the authority to assign tasks, make decisions, or evaluate performance, but they cannot determine the limits of your potential. And sometimes the person sitting quietly in front of them is far more capable than they initially realized. Maybe your boss looked at you and saw someone ordinary. Someone who would simply follow instructions, stay quiet, and accept whatever happened. Perhaps they assumed you needed their approval to feel valuable. Maybe they thought pressure would make you fold. But they may have misunderstood the person they were dealing with. Because you have changed. You learned how to observe before reacting. You learned that not every disagreement deserves an argument. You learned that you don't need to announce every plan before you execute it. You learned to let your performance speak louder than your promises. That kind of growth can be difficult for people to recognize because it doesn't always make noise. Real confidence is often quiet. You don't have to walk into every room demanding attention. You don't have to prove that you're the smartest person there. You don't have to compete with everyone around you. You can simply know what you're capable of and continue developing yourself. That is what makes underestimated people dangerous. Not dangerous in the sense of harming others, but dangerous to the expectations placed upon them. When people expect little from you and you consistently deliver more, their entire perception has to change. Your boss may have judged you based on your past performance, your personality, your mistakes, or even someone else's opinion. But people are not static. A person can develop new skills. A person can become more disciplined. A person can become more focused. A person can learn from failure and return with a completely different mindset. Never let someone else's outdated opinion become your identity. If your boss underestimated you, don't waste your energy trying to convince them through arguments. Become undeniable through consistency. Show up prepared, do the work, improve your skills, communicate clearly, keep your emotions under control. Take responsibility when you make mistakes, and when you succeed, remain humble enough to keep learning. That is how you change perceptions without chasing approval. The goal isn't to make your boss afraid of you. The goal is to become so competent, reliable, and mentally strong that your value becomes impossible to ignore. And remember, your worth does not depend entirely on someone's position above you. A job title can measure authority inside an organization, but it cannot measure your potential as a human being. Your current workplace is one chapter of your story. Your current boss is one person you may encounter along the way. Don't allow one person's opinion to become the ceiling over your entire future. Maybe they don't see your potential yet. That's okay. You don't need everyone to see it before you build it. Keep working. Keep learning. Keep improving. Keep your standards high. One day, the person who underestimated you may realize that they were never looking at your final form. They were looking at a work in progress. And that is the lesson. Never confuse someone's limited perception of you with the actual limits of what you can become. Your boss may control your position today, but your discipline, your choices, your courage, and your growth determine where you go tomorrow. Let your results introduce you, let your consistency defend you, and let your future prove everything your present cannot yet explain. When you realize that people are paying closer attention to your history, your first instinct might be to panic. You might feel the urge to explain yourself, defend every decision, correct every misunderstanding, and prove that you are not the person they think you are. But this is where you have to become disciplined. Not every question deserves an answer. Not every accusation deserves a reaction. And not every person deserves access to every chapter of your life. Stay calm. The moment you lose control of your emotions, you give other people control over you. If someone wants to provoke you, they may be watching to see how quickly you react. They may expect anger, fear, defensiveness, or desperation. Don't give them the reaction they are waiting for. Take a breath. Think. Observe. Then decide what actually deserves your attention. Your calmness is not weakness. It is self-control. There is incredible strength in being able to stand in an uncomfortable situation without immediately trying to escape it. You don't have to fill every silence. You don't have to explain yourself repeatedly. You don't have to convince everyone that your intentions were good. Sometimes the strongest response is simply continuing to behave with integrity. Let your actions create the evidence. If someone questions your character, keep demonstrating character. If someone doubts your ability, keep developing your ability. If someone thinks your past defines you, let your present behavior show them that you've changed. If someone expects you to collapse under pressure, become even more consistent. Don't turn someone else's suspicion into your emotional emergency. This is especially important when dealing with authority figures. If your boss misunderstands you, don't immediately assume the worst. Don't create a conflict based on assumptions. Instead, remain professional. Document important work when appropriate. Communicate clearly. Follow reasonable procedures. Protect your reputation through consistent behavior rather than dramatic reactions. There is a difference between being passive and being strategic. Being passive means allowing others to disrespect you without boundaries. Being strategic means choosing the right response instead of reacting impulsively. You can stand up for yourself without becoming consumed by anger. You can establish boundaries without creating unnecessary chaos. You can defend your integrity without turning every situation into a battle. Remember, you cannot control what people say about your past. You can control what you do today. You cannot control what someone assumes about you. You can control the evidence you create through your actions. You cannot control whether someone understands your journey. You can control whether you continue moving forward. That is where your power lives. And when uncomfortable information comes to light, don't automatically assume that everything is an attack. Sometimes revelations simply reveal reality. They show you who is trustworthy, who is fair, who communicates honestly, and who may not have your best interests in mind. Instead of becoming consumed by fear, become more observant. Pay attention to patterns, pay attention to behaviors, pay attention to how people treat you when they think you have no power. But don't become paranoid. Don't assume every conversation is secretly about you. Don't turn uncertainty into certainty without evidence. Stay grounded in facts. Protect your boundaries. Keep your focus on what you can actually control. Because the strongest person in the room is not always the loudest. Sometimes it is the person who can hear criticism without breaking, face uncertainty without panicking, and continue doing the right thing without needing immediate validation. So if people are looking into your past, let them. If they find mistakes, let your growth answer them. If they find struggles, let your resilience answer them. If they find moments when you were lost, let your direction today answer them. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be grounded. You need to be honest with yourself. You need to keep moving. Because when you stop reacting to every opinion and start focusing on becoming better, you take back the one thing nobody else should control, your direction. The ultimate goal is not to prove that someone else was wrong about you. It is not to expose every person who doubted you, defeat every critic, or make your boss regret underestimating you. The real victory is becoming so grounded, disciplined, and mentally strong that your past no longer has the power to control your future. You cannot change what happened yesterday, but you can decide what yesterday means. Your past may contain mistakes. It may contain choices you would never make today. It may contain moments when you trusted the wrong people, ignored warning signs, reacted emotionally, or simply didn't know what you know now. But growth means accepting that the old version of you had a different level of awareness. You can acknowledge your mistakes without becoming imprisoned by them. You are allowed to evolve. You are allowed to become wiser. You are allowed to change your standards. You are allowed to walk away from the identity that no longer represents you. This is where real transformation begins. Instead of spending your energy wondering who is investigating you or what someone might discover, start asking yourself a better question. Who am I becoming now? Because that question puts the power back in your hands. If your past was filled with chaos, create discipline now. If you once allowed people to cross your boundaries, establish stronger ones now. If you once doubted yourself, start keeping promises to yourself now. If you once depended on outside approval, learn to trust your own judgment now. Don't try to erase your history. Build beyond it. Imagine your life as a book. A difficult chapter does not mean the entire book is bad. A painful chapter does not determine the ending. You may have chapters filled with confusion, loss, rejection, disappointment, and failure. But the story is still being written, and you are holding the pen. That means you don't need to spend your entire life defending chapter 3. You can write chapter 10 differently. This is why becoming stronger matters more than getting revenge. Revenge keeps your attention locked on the people who hurt you. Growth redirects that attention toward your own future. Revenge asks, how can I make them regret what they did? Growth asks, how can I become so much better that their opinion no longer controls my peace? That's a completely different level of power. Maybe your boss never recognizes your potential. Maybe someone continues believing an outdated version of you. Maybe people from your past never acknowledge how much you've changed. You cannot force them to understand. But you can continue becoming better. Build skills, build discipline, build emotional intelligence, build financial responsibility, build healthy relationships, build confidence through action. Build a life that doesn't require constant explanation. Eventually, your transformation becomes visible without an announcement. And remember, being strong doesn't mean becoming cold. It doesn't mean trusting nobody. It doesn't mean believing you're better than everyone else. Real strength allows you to remain compassionate without becoming easily manipulated. It allows you to forgive without forgetting the lessons. It allows you to stay humble while still recognizing your value. So let your past remain behind you, not because it never mattered, but because it already taught you what you needed to learn. If someone looks into your history, let them see the journey. Let them see that you stumbled. Let them see that you struggled. Let them see that you made mistakes. And then let them see the most important part: you kept going. Your history may explain where you came from, but it does not have authority over where you're going. You are not required to remain the person people remember. You are not required to live according to someone else's expectations. You are not required to prove your worth every day. Your responsibility is simpler. Become better than yesterday. Protect your peace, maintain your integrity, and keep building. Because eventually the strongest response to everyone who underestimated you won't be an argument. It won't be revenge. It won't even be an explanation. It will be the life you built after they thought your story was already written.